Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fully Charged Plus podcast. My name is Robert Llewellyn. This podcast is made in conjunction with and alongside the Fully Charged show on YouTube. I'm just saying this now because every now and then I meet people who've just found this podcast or just started listening to it. And they didn't know that we also make the Fully Charged show, which is the original show. It's been going since 2010. So over 12 years now. So I'm just saying that so that if you've just stumbled across this podcast out of a gentle podcast search, it is very much linked to a much bigger show, the Fully Charged show, which is, we look at electric vehicles, renewable energy, modern transportation systems, sustainable circular economy, battery technology, all those topics, some which for reasons that are still slightly beyond me are contentious and upset people. But, that's the way things seem to be these days. Today's episode of the Fully Charged Plus podcast is anything but upsetting. It's delightful, charming, wonderful, optimistic, and really nice. It's just lovely because today's guest is such a special dude. But before we do that, I just want to do a quick shout out to our fantastic sponsors. They've been sponsoring this show for a long time. That isn't going to last forever because things move on and change and the whole way that we're operating is changing. But at the moment, their support of this show is critical and fantastic. And we're really privileged to have them back what we're doing. And that is My Energy, British company that make amazing products that allow you to run your home in a much more sustainable and now, without question, much cheaper way. And it's a really critically important technology that needs to be universally adopted as soon as possible, which is how to make the most of your solar panels, if you've got them, if you're privileged enough to have them, and how much to make the most of your electric vehicle if you're privileged enough to have one. The Zappy charger that is made by My Energy just is a genius piece of equipment that makes life very simple if you're using electric vehicles, makes life much simpler to just charge them from the sun. I've been doing it. Obviously, we've had this incredible heat wave in the UK recently. We have been now completely powered by solar for the last 40 days. Today is the 40th day without using any grid electricity at all. And we also have 2 electric cars. And in fact, my daughter visited yesterday in my old Nissan Leaf and she charged that. So we've actually charged 3 electric cars in the last short time. 100% from solar, and that is made super simple by the Zappy. I just set it to Eco++, beep, 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 Eco++, plug in the car. Nothing goes into that car unless there's excess solar going into the grid, in which case all that is diverted and put into the car. So we charged the Nissan Leaf yesterday from about 5% when she arrived here to 100% in the day, and then she drove off in the evening to go to work, and with a full battery and not 1 penny in actual energy costs. Just saying that. And this is what we've all got to move towards as soon as we can. And it's got to be supported by governments. And it's got to be supported by amazing, innovative companies like My Energy. They also make the Eddy, which is this little box that's in our cupboard, and that diverts energy to wherever it's needed the most. So it heats the water, it sends it to the electric heat store, the thermal store in our electric heating system, or the cooker, or the freezer, or anywhere. It just knows how to do that. And I don't even know what it does. That's the real mystery of the Eddy. I know that My Energy know what it does. It's not like no one knows what it does. It's a box that does some really clever stuff. And it's made by My Energy, and it's worth going and have a look at their website. And I just want to give them a heads up because they are an amazing company. They've gone from 4 people to about 400 in the time we've known them. So they're doing really, really well. And they're a glowing example of what can be done and what must be done. We need hundreds of My Energies to create brilliant new technologies that don't require us to drill and burn. That's the basic bottom line. And today's guest on the Fully Charged Plus podcast is a man who has become a real highlight. What's that called? That word where there's a glowing distant light. A lighthouse. No. Anyway, a wonderful. I watch his show all the time. He's just such a good, clear, scientific explainer. Matt Ferrell, who comes from near Boston, in the United States, and is a really clever. He can do like, I'm rubbish. I don't know. I just know clever people. I'm not clever, but I've met Matt now, and Matt is proper clever and has a background in computer science. He's just a very, very clever guy, and he's obsessed with how technology works, and it has been all his life, and we discussed that a bit. But in 2018, he started his own YouTube channel. So I started in 2010, and we're just approaching 1 million subscribers. Matt started in 2018. He's got 1 million subscribers. Like, 1 million subscribers, thank you. Moving on, next. Not that I'm threatened or jealous. I'm full of admiration and a very small amount of repressed jealousy, because he's so, what he does is so super clear. So he kind of covers similar areas to us, but in a slightly more personal way, in a very American focused way, which is great because he's American and he lives in America. And he's fascinated by sustainable and smart technologies, solar panels, smart homes, all that stuff. So very much in our ballpark. And I'm so thrilled that Matt agreed to do this podcast with me. And even though I did mess up, as I explained in the first, I screwed up the first arrangement we had. And he's so patient and kind. He put up with a silly old fool. So that's enough waffle. Please welcome to the Fully Charged Plus podcast, Mr. Matt Ferrell. So, Matt, this is so exciting. Thank you so much for joining me. And I'm going to be very honest. I think it's important to be honest to our audiences that we were meant to do this over a week ago and I screwed up. So I just want the audience to know that you are an extraordinarily generous and patient person. You didn't get cross, and you forgave me for being an absolute hopeless, useless idiot.
Yeah, I appreciate you inviting me on, and things happen. That's all I know.
Yes, they do. Things happen. But we got there. Yeah. We got there in the end, which is really, really exciting. I think one of the things, certainly something that's really at the forefront in this country right now, which I don't know how much you know about it, but our energy costs have just gone insanely huge. Just unbelievable. And I mean, it's throwing so many people to the wolves. It's just unbelievable. I mean, it's but I mean, a good example is my current price for daytime electricity for me is 17 pence a kilowatt hour, which is equivalent to kind of, roughly equivalent to 17 cents US. It's not quite, but it's close. And that's going up to 40 overnight.
Whoa.
Like that. You go, that's not, because if it went up to sort of 23, you go, wow, that's a big increase. That's a jump. But it's got up to 40 now. It could go as high as 55 or 60 later this year. So It's a phenomenal increase. Now, I'm, like you, buffered from that by having a lot of solar, having batteries, because I have a nighttime tariff, off-peak tariff, which is currently just under 5 pence a kilowatt hour, and that will go up to 7. Well, that is, that's just what happens in life. Things go up. But that's gone up a little bit, but to go from 17 to 40. But also, I mean, I've noticed recently shopping here, everything we're experiencing kind of almost pre-war German levels of inflation, where you've got to take a wheelbarrow full of money to buy a loaf of bread. It's kind of terrifying. Really, and I'm just intrigued for one thing to know if that isn't really happening in the United States at the moment, not to that extent.
Not to that extent. We are seeing like electricity prices rise. Like for me, my electricity prices here in Massachusetts, where I live, are historically 23 to 24 cents per kilowatt hour. It's kind of
roughly equivalent to where we were. Yeah.
Now gone up over 30 cents. So it is where we are increase in electricity prices. And then the same thing at the store. It's like everything is more now. And my favorite part of the grocery store, they're actually putting less in the boxes, but they're keeping the price the same. So it's like, it's like the prices aren't rising, but they're giving you less for the same amount of money. So
that's like the cost of half a dozen eggs is exactly the same, but you only get 4.
Exactly.
That's an intriguing. That's a new form of capitalism I haven't come across before. That's quite intriguing. But I mean the arguments here, they've been raging in my Twitter stream and all those things that I follow. the people I follow, whether it's the green tariff, because there's a green levy on our UK energy, which is about a penny a kilowatt hour, if that. It's not very big. But everybody, but because there's the politics of it, there's a lot of people going on. If we could cut the green levy, we'd all have cheap electricity. Yeah, it would be 39 pence a kilowatt hour as opposed to 40. Really big difference. And so all that stuff. But I can't. What is frustrating is, I've checked. I know people who work in the industry. The price of renewables hasn't gone up. If anything, it's gone down. And the price of wholesale solar energy, wholesale wind hasn't gone up at all. And why? And I'm supposed to be buying that from my energy. I mean, I do understand why that happens, but it is. I've had so many tweets about that. People being frustrated with that, with the energy mix we're forced to have. So we're now subsidizing gas from wind and solar, which
is in a very large way. Yeah.
Yeah. But then, so anyway, it's just one of those, it's very much at the forefront. And I think what we are both suggesting is that it would be possible to function in an advanced society and in comfort without, in our case, importing gas from really quite questionable regimes. I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of energy independence with the solar and batteries and stuff that you can do. Yeah.
I mean, I think we're in a position where it would be very unwise to disconnect from Europe. Although we have politically, but we haven't with our energy. So we still buy and sell electricity, which is like Massachusetts selling it to New York State or something. I mean, that local area. But you're right. I mean, to import gas from the other side of the world, or some people have been suggesting we should get coal from Australia. Well, that makes a lot of sense.
No. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
But anyway, look, let's go back. Now, I've had my little rant about that because there isn't really a solution. That's the frustration. I want someone to say, Robert, what you should do is this. And you go, oh, yeah, right. I mean, there's hundreds of potential solutions in the future.
Yeah.
But nothing right now. But I just wanted to go back for people who don't know your show, which is just brilliant. Can you tell us how you got to do that and what you did before you did it? You did an annoyingly successful, brilliant, and fascinating YouTube channel.
Yeah, I've been involved in technology fields all my career. I was a user interface and user experience designer. I've got a background in communications, but I've always been fascinated by science and technology and engineering, and worked very closely with engineers at my previous jobs. And I got to a point in my career where it was like, I want to make a change. I don't want to be doing this anymore. I want to do something where I can try to put some good out in the world, and started my YouTube channel and wanted to focus on technology, but didn't know what I wanted to call it and what I wanted to focus on, which is why my channel actually started being called Undecided with Matt Ferrell, because I didn't know what the channel was going to be about.
It's a great title. I love it.
And as I started going down that path, my passions took me to climate change and where sustainable technologies kind of overlap.
Yeah.
And so that's where I started to focus, and it's just been kind of going gangbusters ever since. Just dumb luck. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I totally understand. And I mean, I think one of the aspects of your show, which is very ununique, it's a thing I've experienced with a lot of engineers, is I'll hear something like, in fact, even the energy crisis that we're going through in this country now, and I'm in that sort of state. It's terrible. How do we do it? That's I go into a panic and go, this is the end of the world. It's all finished. Whereas all the engineers I've ever met have gone, oh, that's brilliant. Let's try and sort that out. That's the complete.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. There's a massive problem that's totally overwhelming. Oh no, I give up. No, we can work this out, which is, I think you emanate that kind of potential and optimism, which I think is becoming an incredibly valuable commodity at the moment.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm a glass half full kind of guy. It's
me too.
The humankind can do anything when we put our minds to it, and that's what fascinates me about the engineers and the researchers and the scientists. They're doing amazing things. Yeah. So it gives me a ray of hope for where we can go.
Yeah. So I think we should list the fact it's a cliche that we neither of us have a lot of hair. We both wear glasses. We both have Teslas, we have solar panels, and we have Tesla Powerwalls. And I kind of feel like there must be something I've got that Matt hasn't, or he's got something I haven't, but it's horrifyingly similar.
Yes. It seems to be like a requirement to be doing this. You have to have no hair.
No hair and glasses. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's great. You're similar to me in that sense. Your house is something I just said on Twitter today when someone asked me about new houses being built. I said anyone who builds a new house now that doesn't produce 80% of its own energy should be arrested. And I admit that's a radical statement.
Well, what's funny is I'm actually building a new house for myself.
Right.
And it's going to be a net zero home. I'm going like all out on it. It's going to have ground source. It's going to have geothermal heating and cooling, solar panels, batteries, the whole 9 yards. So I'm very excited about it. And I agree with you 100%. All new houses should be basically net zero. There's no reason not to.
Yeah. Yes, and we've seen some. There are some examples of it around the world, but there are some here, which is great. But let's go. I mean, one of the key things I think, which is very exciting, which I know you've focused on, and I've always tried to sort of see what's going on, is the very easy critique of renewable energy. Oh, it's intermittent, and the more I learn about it, the more I go, well, it's so irrelevant for one thing, and two, it's so much cheaper, and three, it's so much cheaper to make more of it, and it's not a problem. But I think certainly energy storage is clearly the huge focus. I think in what was renewables, 20 years ago, you put up a wind turbine and it made some electricity, and that was enough. That was good enough. Or you put some solar panels on a roof, and that was brilliant. And that next step of how you store that, and that one of your really recent episodes of how you could store electricity in a fluid is just that bent my brain. That one, because that isn't like using solar panels to do something to a fluid that you store. Like you would heat salt or heat sand or all the other.
Right.
This is like you create molecules that change when they're in the sun.
They change shape, and they hold that energy until you need it up to 18 years later.
18 years. I mean, that is just bonkers. When you hear things like that, but what I also can't predict, that's where my science lets me down, is how likely that is to happen. It sounded like they had some fairly major things to overcome.
Yeah, they've been working on this for years now.
Right.
I think way more than 5 years. I think it's like 8 years or something like that. They've been working on it, and they still clearly have years ahead of them to really kind of work out the kinks. But you can see like my optimism. You can see where this is going in the future. Fast forward 10 years and imagine this integrated into a solar panel, and it's like it could be huge. It could be absolutely huge.
Yeah. Because I love all those things. Like, I'm sure you know about it. The ones which is that using existing like big tower crane technology to lift concrete blocks up, build a tower, and then unbuild it. Just like, and there's a guy in the UK who wants to drop huge 300-ton weights down old mine shafts, of which we have hundreds. Like a giant sort of just a huge. Because when he first told me about it, I said, so. Like, does it weigh a ton then, this big thing? And you're like, no, 300 tons. It's 300-ton concrete weight with 4 electric generators on the top with wheels, pulleys. They're called gravitricity. You can Google it. And they had an experimental system working at COP26 in Glasgow last year.
Oh, wow.
Which was I think a mere 5-ton weight on a tower they built just to show. And it's dropping really, really slowly. And that's generating 50 kilowatts or whatever at that scale. And they're talking about, 5, 6, 7 megawatts per pit. But then I think the problem...
How close are they to actually doing something?
I think it's absolutely now funding, it's raising the money, and it's also finding a pit, which I think they have done, which has a suitably firm base around the top of the hole. Because that's often the case, is that when you dug a coal mine, you didn't worry about that. You built a lift thing to get your miners up and down, but the ground around the top of the could be very unstable. So until we carry a 300-ton weight, it requires quite a lot of stability and firm. You'd want a sort of big solid base. So I think there's a cost in transforming the site, as it were. But it's already an industrial site, so it's already, it would be a mess anyway. But then the ones that I've actually been to, which you've mentioned in some of your shows, is the big. You've got a really good term for it. The solar reflectors, the big curved mirrors. in California. I went and filmed there a few years ago for the BBC. I can't remember the name of that place, but the other one was Ivanpah. So I have been to Ivanpah as well. Yeah.
Yep.
Which they are amazing. And I was really blown away by Ivanpah, but I believe they've had because it's been going quite a long time, isn't it? It's not that new.
It's been going on for years. Yeah.
Yeah. But I've heard all sorts of negative stories about Ivanpah, not about the other one. The solar reflectors, no one's ever mentioned that. And I was blown away by that. It's huge, that installation, isn't it? It's enormous.
Yeah, Ivanpah's had some issues with those kind of systems. Typically have people bring up like the birds with systems like that. Yeah, the birds, which is a negative. I'm not going to say it's not.
No, absolutely. Yeah. But the other flip side, which a guy who had worked there, who I met, said, have they told you about the tortoises? And I went, oh no, it kills tortoises as well. But it doesn't. It's because the birds can't land and kill the tortoises. There's this enormous population of indigenous desert tortoise around the base of Ivanpah, because they're fine down there. It's nice and sunny. They've got shade under all the mirrors if they need it, and there's no birds of prey coming to get them. So I don't know how true that is. It sounded a bit wistful thinking. Yeah. But I mean, in terms of the American grid, what do you see happening, like on a kind of a nationwide scale? I mean, I don't know what the penetration of renewables is. It's got to be fairly substantial in terms of rooftop solar. I would think the adoption in the US is fairly high with that.
Yeah, rooftop solar is gaining a lot of speed. But for utility scale, there's a lot of very large solar farms popping up, like in Texas and different areas of the country. Yeah. Lots of wind that's popping up too. Yeah. Not without controversy. There's a lot of my backyard towards some of this stuff, but it is gaining speed. It's the energy storage side that we're talking about that's like seems to me be lagging a bit. There's not enough of that at all.
Yeah. And I think that's the big challenge. I mean, it's actually, if there was no political resistance to wind turbines, we could put up 100 million of them around the world. They work. They're the cheapest way of making electricity by a long shot. But today in the UK, it's really still. Which is not always. And where I live is a very windy area, and I can look out at the trees, and they're just like they ain't doing much.
Yeah.
So that does happen. So you've got to be able to cover those periods, haven't you? And it's the scale of it, because what you actually need to store is terawatt hours, effectively. Which,
exactly. There's a couple of companies I've talked to, Highview Power, which I think might be in the UK.
Yes, I've heard of Highview. Yeah,
they're doing liquid air energy storage systems.
Yes, thank you.
And there's another company that's using CO2 called Energy Dome from Italy. I actually just talked to them recently. It's like those kind of systems to me are what feel like could really become pervasive, because it's using existing technologies from like the natural gas industry. So it's like canisters and all the pipes and all that kind of stuff. So it's using skill sets we already have. It's using equipment that you can buy off the shelf, and it can provide seriously megawatt hours, terawatt hours of energy storage very effectively and cheaply. So it's like, to me, when I see that kind of stuff, it's like, it looks like the most promising thing to me right now.
Yes, I think you're right. Yes, rather, because I mean, I went to see recently a very big, the first really large scale battery in the UK. It's in Oxford, a grid battery, and it's mostly lithium ion, but there are There's one section which is flow batteries. You all know the name of it. I want to say
redox flow batteries.
Redox flow batteries. Thank you.
Yeah.
And that's, I think that is something, I can't remember how many megawatts. It's in the megawatt hour range of batteries. Mm-hmm. And so they're kind of running that alongside the two. So I think the whole thing is over 50 megawatt hours, the whole setup. But you can just go, well, that's brilliant. And I was really excited about it. And it is 50 megawatt hours, which is a hell of a lot. And one of the things it does as a side issue is buffer the grid for a big car charging hub, where they could put in 400 350 kilowatt hour chargers. So you could, they haven't, and they say they never will, but they could put in another 100 without any extra wires or anything being put in. They have the capacity at the site, which would be extraordinary. So that sort of thing, those sort of little changes are happening kind of behind the scenes, because if you're a general member of the public, you would never see that battery. It's in a remote site. It's behind a big fence. You can't go and see it. It's not on display. but it's having a big impact on the local community. I mean, it's enough power to run about 10,000 homes in Oxford for a few hours, if there was a problem. But so that stuff is really exciting. And I mean, I saw Tesla batteries being put in California. I don't know how long ago that was, like 5 or 6 years ago, for the boss of PG&E, who clearly cares about the environment. He flew in to do the interview in his helicopter.
Oh my God. The irony of that. Oh, come on.
It was next to a solar farm with a load of, and I was so impressed. I was going, God, these guys really know. And then I heard as the helicopter came in. Oh, that's interesting. I wonder if that's not a battery electric helicopter. I don't think it is.
Oh man.
But then do you go around? Because I mean, all of the shows I've seen of you is you like I'm seeing now is you there, which is you're so sensible.
Yeah, it's like, I want to do more travel. I want to do more going out there, but like the pandemic hit, so most of the places I was talking to, they don't want to do it. So it's right now it's starting to probably spin up where I'll start to get out there a little more often.
Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah, because I think it does make a difference when you can actually go and see those things, doesn't it? But
yeah.
So I mean, what is there a particular technology? Well, you were just mentioning the compressed air, but is there a particular technology you have the most interest and hope in? I mean, is there anything that's jumped out that you've seen in the last couple of years
for energy storage?
Yeah. Just, I mean, we'll move on from, but
I would say it would definitely be with kind of that CO2 battery I was just talking about. Systems like that, because it feels like you can. One of the concerns is people are going to lose their jobs from like as renewable energy increases, the coal industry and those people. So it's imagine taking somebody from the natural gas industry and saying, here's a new job using your existing skill sets for this CO2 battery. So you got you can move jobs over very easily, as well as create very cheap, affordable, large scale energy storage systems anywhere in the world. It's not dependent on hydro. You don't have to have water nearby. You don't have to have mine shafts where you're dropping giant weights into it. So it's like, there's benefits of systems like this where you can literally build it anywhere. So it's those are the ones I'm kind of like really eyeing as like those seem the most promising to me right now.
Yeah. And also you could build something like that where there is an existing, say a gas-fired power station. I mean, you could actually put it on the same site because you've already got the engineers living in that area that know how to run that know how to do gas and pipes and valves. That kind of makes sense. I mean, it's that one. And then the little I've learned about, I've forgotten their name now. Is it the one you people
Quays?
You've interviewed? Quays.
Yeah, Quays.
That's a new word. I've got to learn Quays. I'm just writing that down so I remember. But that you then go, when I understood what their plan was, that they would drill boreholes effectively at a site where there's a power station already. So they could actually just use the existing infrastructure. You then go, that makes that really clicked with me. I mean, whether they can do it.
Just very quickly, so much cost.
Oh my God, But just very quickly, we went to see a drilling rig in Cornwall last year, I think, which is for a geothermal generation, and they're drilling in granite, and we were absolutely amazed because they're trying to drill about 5 kilometers deep, and you go, that is unbelievable. But what Quays are talking about is 20 kilometers.
Yes,
that's the depth that they're talking about, and you go, that is bonkers. I mean, how on earth? Because that has got to be maybe your engineering knowledge but it's basically one long pipe that you're twisting that's 20 kilometers long.
Well, for Quays, what they're doing is they're doing traditional drilling for the first, I can't remember how many kilometers, and then they're using their new system, which is basically using something from fusion technology. It's almost like a death ray. They're basically putting a pipe down into the hole, and it's basically just this incredible heat that it's just bombarding the rock and melting it. It's vaporizing it, and so that vaporized rock then comes up out of the hole, so it basically self-evacuates itself.
And
it's so hot that the hole then basically turns to glass, so it makes the hole more
rigid. Kind of sealed.
It's self-sealing, and so it's like it's this very effective way to drill holes down 20 kilometers for geothermal. It's incredible.
That is God. That is amazing. And so they're still at the experimental stage. I mean, have they drilled 20 kilometers yet? I don't believe
they have not done that yet.
Right.
They've done a bunch of testing, and right now they're starting their pilot project, which will drill. I can't remember. I think it's like 5 kilometers or something like that. It's a small hole, but they're starting that now. Is what they're starting to do. So in the next few years, we'll probably hear from them how that went.
Yes, because it does. I mean, when the technology was explained to me in Cornwall, you just go, that it makes a huge amount of sense. It just is so obviously, and then I love the fear, because of course immediately I took a picture of this and said, oh, we're at this geothermal drill thing. They're going to make a turbine, blah, 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 blah. If we do too many of those, it'll cool the core of the Earth down and we'll all freeze to death. That is brilliant. To come up, I want you to come up with a more ridiculous thing than that. It's just that is something I do want to talk to you about, is the psychology of emerging technologies rather than the actual technology. Because I think with electric cars now, my argument is that the technology is solved. I'm not even interested. It's now completely psychological. All the barriers about it. Oh, I'm going to run out. Well, you can run out of fossil fuels. I've done it many times. I've sat at the side of the road with an empty fuel tank. It's not easy to recharge a gas tank when you've run out. You feel like an absolute idiot.
Once you burn that fuel, it's gone.
It's gone. It's not coming back. But sorry, that 5 kilometers, was using traditional. So it was an oil rig, and it was oil rig workers. So it's going back to that thing you said. It was people who've drilled for oil all over the world. Quite a lot of people from the Czech Republic, strangely, that were actually doing the drilling. And that's the other thing that's happened in this country, is the kind of job transfer from the offshore oil and gas industry to offshore wind, including the actual technology they're using. So the ships that would install a big oil rig or a gas rig out in the North Sea are now being used to install of offshore wind turbines. And it was, as one guy explained to me, he said, if you can put something really big and metal up in the sea and it doesn't fall over, that's a transferable skill. That's a fairly simple explanation for somebody who's never done it.
Yeah.
But that's anyway, sorry, there was a question there, but I've completely forgotten what it was.
Well, you were talking about the psychology of like the people that are resisting that. You're resisting this. I hear that a ton. And for me, a lot of the resistance comes from, are people looking for, it seems that people are looking for a perfect solution. Like, if this is supposed to be better, it has to be perfect compared to what we're doing today. Yeah. Where my attitude is, well, no, it's like, we just have to take a step forward. Each one just should be a step forward. Yeah. So like with EVs, I was hearing a lot, well, you can't recycle the batteries. It's like, well, guess what? We can recycle the batteries now, because companies have figured out how to do that. Yeah. So it's just one of those, we're always going to be getting better at this, and we shouldn't be striving for perfection. We should be striving for just taking one advance after another.
I mean, it would be lovely to develop another industry, let's say electric vehicles or energy storage, that wasn't quite as rapacious and damaging as the oil industry has been for the last 150 years. Let's just have that as a baseline. If it's a bit better, it would be very good. I mean, that's certainly a big thing, because I know there's a moves in the US about sort of effectively onshoring batteries. Having the material, because the materials are there. A lot of them are. A huge amount of them are actually in sort of the North American area, aren't they? And that history of what we've done, and that's happened in our lifetime. So if you're much younger than us, you may not know that, but it was an absolute deliberate policy for us to offshore manufacturing to China. That was something that was discussed very publicly. Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher, they were very pro. And for I don't say that it was necessarily bad reasons. I mean, it was to try and an open China was better than a kind of isolated, paranoid regime that was I don't know, it was frightening, same as the Soviet Union. And that one, suddenly, when China became this manufacturing superpower, it was all brilliant until it gets a bit awkward like now.
Like, we're totally dependent on them for all of our manufacturing. It's like, okay.
Yeah. Try and find a product that doesn't say made in China on it. It would probably say made in India if it's clothing.
I mean, that's another problem here in the United States is we do have a lot of the minerals and things we need here, but there's a resistance to mine for it here.
Yes.
So it's this weird challenge we've got here in the United States. We just can't come to agreement on it.
It doesn't seem to have held back fracking.
No, everybody loves fracking here.
Because that has an impact on the environment. You can see a fracking well. It's not like it doesn't. Yeah.
Being able to light your water coming out of the tap on fire, that's normal. That's good.
Because is there any fracking nearby where you live? Is there any in your local
Not where I live.
area? Right.
Not where I live, thankfully. But it's still very pervasive in other areas of the country.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess we have to admit that it's worked. I mean, I've always been very opposed to it, but it has produced a lot of, a lot of burnable stuff. But from what I can gather, they run out pretty quickly. They're not like it's not a long lasting. You don't drill one hole and that supplies gas for the next 50 years. It seems to be quite short term.
Well, the more we're using this stuff, we're having to look harder for it. So it's like that's why we're fracking, because it's harder to find. So it's this is not a permanent solution.
No.
We got to stop.
Yeah. And then so let's do a bit of cars, because that is, I don't know how, because the last time I was in the United States, I was in California, and I'm going there again soon. It's so obvious there that specifically Tesla have kind of made a colossal impact. I worked in Los Angeles in the early noughties and went to meetings at TV companies where the car park was full of the most unsuitable cars for California, black European posh cars, BMWs, Audis, Mercedes. And if you're a TV executive, you wanted a black BMW. And then you drive that in Los Angeles where it's really hot. It's just not a good color for a car.
Yeah.
And now you go to California, I don't see any Mercedes or Audis, unless they're electric. You just see Teslas. I sat in a traffic jam on actual Sunset Boulevard, and I think I saw one or two combustion cars. I just felt I was in a Tesla. So was everyone else.
Yeah. They're everywhere.
Common. Yeah.
Where I am, Teslas are just pervasive. They're very, very popular here.
Because you've got a Model 3.
I've got a Model 3. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Because they're even here. They are in the area of the UK where I live, though, the southern bit. They're really common. The further north you go, the rarer they become, until you get to Scotland, and then they're very common.
Well, let me ask you a question. In Europe, you guys have far more options for EVs than we do here in the United States.
Yes, that's true. That is true.
Do you see a pretty good mix of Tesla and these other models on the roads?
Certainly. I mean, in the last, say, 3 or 4 years, Volkswagen, so electric Volkswagens really made a big impact. So the ID3, really common. You see them everywhere. We've got an ID4 just recently, a Volkswagen, it's a great car, except the software. So you then go, they really can't do software. Because I always judge it by, like, there's an app that they tell you to download the app when you get the car. And I downloaded the app, and then it goes, put in the VIN number and you connect it and it'll connect. No, it didn't. And I went, that's just me. I'm rubbish at doing that. I'm old. And I asked one of our team, who's 25, I said, can you get the app to work? And he went, no. And I went, no, on the VW, can you? No, it doesn't work. If a 25-year-old tells you it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So that's the downside of it. But as a car, it's great. I love it. It's a really good, it's a nice car to drive. But yeah, we do have a hugely bigger choice. I mean, more so in Europe than here. So it's about being right-hand drive, being annoying and different. It makes it a bit harder. But we still do have a very wide choice of electric cars. And you do see a lot of them around, but without question, Tesla is the dominant model.
Right. On occasion, I'll see a Hyundai, or a Ford or something like that. But most of the time, it's almost always a Tesla.
Yeah.
And it's like, I wish we had more of the cars that are offered in Europe over here.
Yes.
It would be great.
No, the Hyundai, I mean, I think that's the really big thing. I would say that the second to Tesla in terms of technology, software, battery management, genius battery management is Hyundai. They are just amazing how well they do that. And we had a Hyundai Kona for 4 years. And it still did the most miles per kilowatt hour of any car we've had.
Wow,
better than a Tesla. It was amazing. So that they are really good, and they're new ones. But you do see a lot of those. So there's Kia, and Hyundai are very popular brands here that do very well, and they're really nice cars. But then the one of the intriguing stories, I think, with the US, which I'm really looking forward to seeing, because that's happened since I've last been there, is Dieselgate and the Volkswagen investment in the charging network. And so it's Electrify America, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what's all over the place. Yep.
Yeah. So that is noticeable that you see that everywhere.
I see it a lot, and my friends that don't have Teslas that use it all complain at length about it. That they're either always broken or they can't get it to charge because the computer system is down or something like that. So they're always complaining about how unreliable the network is, which is
so sad.
It's so sad. We need to have that work well. For adoption.
Why is it? Because you got to know this. Why is it? Because it annoys me, but you've got to admire them for it. Because they just annoy me, and the boss of the company annoys me. But why? You get in a Tesla and you've got the app, and it connects to the car instantly, and it always works. And then you drive to the supercharger and you plug it in, and it always works. Why can they do it?
Yes. Well, not to be mean about this, but it's like Tesla's superchargers are just dumb superchargers that just have basically a modem in it. So it's like it's talking to the car. And on Electrify America, it's basically a Windows computer that's embedded inside these giant things, and it's a lot. I had a Porsche Taycan that I did a review on and was trying it out, and I went to an Electrify America and tried to plug in. The first one I plugged it into, I looked up and there was the blue screen of death Windows screen on the charger, and I was just like, oh, okay. So
wow,
there we go. Yeah, so there's technical challenges. Technology is failing them. They overcomplicated it, where Tesla went the simplest route they could possibly go.
But it is, I think I find it infuriating just because I kind of feel guilty about it, but because in a sense it's like Apple and Windows. And I don't want to even think that it's like that. But I remember all these people going, oh, you're living in the walled garden of the uber privileged by using an Apple. You go, well, yeah, but it does work. That's all I'm interested in. What's going on with
Tesla?
And then you go, you're definitely in a walled garden for the uber privileged in a Tesla. And that is so weird because all the other systems have to work with everything. They have to work with every car that's made. And we've certainly had that discussion here with people who install chargers, and they go, we always get the blame and there's nothing we can do about it. It's always our fault. And every manufacturer has a different interface with the charging network, and they don't know what they're doing, and they plug into our chargers and our chargers go, we don't know what that is, we're going to shut down. It's not necessarily the charger, it can be the car. And they've got to deal with every electric car manufacturer, some of which are brilliant, Taycan being a good example, some of which are not very good.
Yeah. They'll figure it out in time. They'll work out the kinks as more standards get put into place, but it's just a painful period we're in right now.
It's agony. No, it is the most. I think we're probably one step ahead of you in that sense, that our charging infrastructure is finally approaching. You can see reliability on a distant hill. We're not there, but
you can see it coming
in the right direction. Yeah, you can see. Yes, yeah. God, it is so frustrating because when it's interesting for us because my wife has the ID4 and I have the Tesla, so we swap them around, but it is technically her car. But it's really useful to have that experience where you're using the general charging infrastructure, rather than the perfection that we have been given. I have used a Tesla supercharger that didn't work. I plugged in and just nothing happened, and I had to move the car. I had to move the car one charger down, plug it in again, and it did work. So there was one. That's the only time it's happened. I think it's happened twice in 6 years of, nearly 7 years of Tesla use.
Yeah,
just
I've had one issue where
didn't work.
Yeah, I pulled in and the cable was actually broken. Somebody had broken the connector. So it was like that was the only time I've encountered an issue was a hardware issue, and that was it.
Yeah. Oh no, I've been to one supercharger where the end one, which was near a turning back out onto the highway, the end one was just flat on the ground. A truck had driven over it. That one didn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah, that failed. Look at Tesla, you're not that clever with your flattened supercharger. Yeah, that was pretty obvious. No one was trying to plug into that one. Yeah. But then do you feel the general public attitude? I'll do it very quickly. That I used to do a talk that was called "Electric Cars Are Rubbish, Aren't They?" ? Mm-hmm. And I did it for a few times. And then I could really sense this change in attitude in the audiences. It was just general public. And so I changed it to electric cars are rubbish, full stop, new line, aren't they? Question mark. Because it was like, because they were going, I think they're rubbish. And that, now I wouldn't be able to do that talk with that title, because it's just the general perception has moved on that that my next car will be electric. They're not quite ready yet, but my next car will be electric.
That's exactly what I see. Most people I talk to, it's along those lines of, I want an electric car. I just don't think they're ready quite yet. It might be my next one in a few years. There's not a charging network that I trust. I don't know if I can drive far enough, but most people are like, I want to get an electric vehicle. It's just a matter of when.
Right. So that is interesting, isn't it? Because then the other one that pops up every now and then, which I'd love to get your take on, is the hydrogen, which I think actually it's now become just a sort of a trolling thing online. Obviously hydrogen is the future, and you go, well, I just don't answer. I don't get involved anymore. But I don't get. Do you still get arguments that I'm waiting for a hydrogen car? Because I don't get. Oh, you do, because I don't get that so much now.
Yeah, and not much. It does happen. It's just not much. It's hydrogen cars. Obviously, in my opinion, you probably share this. Are not going to happen. Yeah. It's not going to happen. Don't wait for that. But there is a place for hydrogen in the renewable sphere.
Absolutely.
It's just not in cars.
Yes. Yeah. No, I mean, I've been in a hydrogen luxury coach. Hyundai made it. It's fantastic. Worked really well. And it was very nice to be in a coach that when it sat still in traffic, it wasn't vibrating. It wasn't going with an engine ticking away. It was nothing. It was very, very, and very swift. The acceleration. Well, it was an electric coach basically, but it had hydrogen fuel cells. Yeah. But then, so the car ownership thing, I think, is the other thing that I've got fascinated by because of, and I think it's not going to happen in America. I just want to know if you think this, but there are like quite advanced car sharing schemes in, say, cities in the Netherlands and Germany, in urban areas where it was, what was interesting was talking to the people who are using them, who are effectively the early adopters who would have bought a Tesla five years ago.
Right.
So quite well off, and they've sold their car because using the car sharing is a better experience. That was their shtick. And they're living in medieval cities in where they definitely weren't designed for cars. They were designed for an ox pulling a cart at the biggest piece of traffic. And that was a big truck coming down. Mostly it was walking with clogs on, So, very different environment and not suited to cars at all. And cars don't work in those places.
Right.
But when you see that at a scale that you can go, oh, that would work, I think that it is our relationship with cars, I think, is really hard because it's so ingrained. I mean, I think in us, it's ingrained in us. We've grown up with it. It's just normal.
This is one of those things where I think the United States is going to really struggle compared to like the UK. Our entire country is built for driving. Like our cities are built for driving. It's not built for pedestrians. It's like we have a harder path ahead of us to kind of transition away from that. But my brother lives in New York City, and they use, was it a Zipcar? I think it's what the company. They use Zipcar. It's like car ownership for him is a non-starter.
Right.
But when he needs a car, he can easily get one.
He can get one. So that's interesting. So seems to be New York, because there's an extraordinary podcast that comes out of New York called The War Against Cars, I think, which is basically very angry cyclists who live in Brooklyn.
Yes.
And I got the impression they don't like SUVs. I don't know what makes me think that, other than they just whine about them a lot. But I think it's really interesting because particularly in the United States, where the SUV comes from, effectively it's the home of the SUV, and that infection we caught that virus in this country because there are ridiculously there are
I'm so sorry.
There's so many people, particularly I live in a rural area. It's a very popular thing. I've got to say, it's all people use them, but I will often see a single woman driving in a Range Rover, a 3-ton, diesel.
So what do you think about electric SUVs.
Well,
do you
you've
still
got
have a problem with SUVs?
Yeah, I do. I just think they're like unnecessary. But I mean, effectively, I drive one because the ID4 is on the cusp of SUV-ishness.
Yeah.
They're just so big. We don't. And European roads and cities were never built for those vehicles of that size, and they take up so much room. I think that's the problem. I think there is a very strong sort of cultural move away from that. But I don't know. Range Rover, Land Rover and Jaguar Land Rover, still doing very well. They're selling a lot of huge Range Rovers, some of which are plug-in hybrid. Matt, I mean, they're really cutting edge.
They're pushing
technology.
the boundaries. They're pushing the boundaries.
It's my favorite topic. I'm gonna pitch this to you, and I'll see what you say. We can carry on burning fossil fuels without a second thought because we can capture the carbon and store it.
No. Just no. That is absolutely no.
Yeah. God, isn't it amazing?
But I do think carbon capture has its place. It's like
right.
But using it as a crutch to continue doing what we're doing is an absolute non-starter.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's the air. There's a particular term for it, isn't it? Where you're not trying to capture it. Where direct air capture. So you're just capturing out the air, which they're running a plant, I believe, in Iceland at the moment.
Yeah.
But then someone I follow on Twitter, a very good scientist, I think she may be German, said, "This is amazing technology. In a year, it will capture the global output of the UK. It will capture 30 seconds."
Yes.
Of the global output of CO2 in 1 year of operation.
Right. The kind of carbon capture I have kind of like leaned into of like, oh, that's interesting is like biochar and enhanced weathering systems. I actually just put a video out about this recently, and it's using natural approaches that can actually have a benefit of biochar with agriculture and increases the crops. It's good for farms, regenerative farming. And it's helping to sequester carbon in a stabilized form in the ground, for years. And so it's like, okay, that's one way that we can to sequester it.
So can you explain? All right, can you explain what biochar is though? I'm trying to think of that because I have worked on farms. Is that not? So you cut corn. You leave the stalks and stems in the field. No, what do you do?
No, well, biochar is like you're basically taking leftover think about like a dead tree. Instead of letting a dead tree kind of rot and slowly kind of release all of its stored carbon and back into the atmosphere as it dies, or burning that wood to completion so all of it is released back into the atmosphere. Yeah. You basically are you're burning it with less oxygen in a contained chamber. And by doing this, you're basically accelerating the process of creating coal again. You're basically creating kind of a coal-like product.
Yeah.
So, but you're doing it very quickly. And what that does is it stabilizes the carbon dioxide in that form, and it will no longer break down.
Right.
But that stuff, if you basically turn it into a powder and you sprinkle it over a farm and you integrate it into the till the soil,
right?
It helps the plants grow. It adds. Wow. It improves the soil. Yeah. So it's like you can use it for farming, and it's helping to sequester that carbon.
Yes.
In a stabilized form.
That is fascinating. I mean, I find it fascinating simply because I have a heritage. So some of my family roots from hundreds of years ago are in an area of the UK called the Forest of Dean. There's some trees there, but it's no longer a forest, where they would burn charcoal. They would burn charcoal. They would make they would build the big mound. They'd light the wood and they'd cover it up. And your job was to not see a flame, and you turn all that wood into charcoal, and then that would be used as fuel then. But basically, what you're talking about is turning bio waste, wood, whatever it is, into charcoal. Grind it. I'd never heard of that. That is genius. And that doesn't release the carbon. Then I can understand why it doesn't in the process of turning it into charcoal, because it's genuinely sealed in, isn't it? Nothing's coming out.
Correct. And it's not like an endless thing where you keep doing this again and again on a farm. There's a point where you kind of saturate the soil, so it's like there's a science behind how much you do, and it's not like an endless sequestering, but it's the idea of we can help to keep the carbon out of the atmosphere and help grow food with it, it makes me, it ticks all the boxes for me.
Yes.
That makes so much more sense than direct air capture. It's just, way more sense.
Yeah. Because it's also, if someone had said, oh, look, if we capture it, we can then produce this black powder that we then plow into fields, and it's really good for the soil. But no one ever says that. They're going to pump it into old oil wells where they've depleted all the oil. What you mean? And that was not going to come out. That's what we're meant to believe. That's going to stay in there.
Yeah.
Where we all know everything that we've ever done like that leaks. That's just the nature of things, isn't it? Yeah. But there was another one. You said biochar, and there was something else.
There's something called enhanced weathering. This one was new to me. It's like basalt rock. Like if you grind up basalt and then do the same thing and sprinkle it over like land for crops, it does something very similar, because it's like rain when it hits rock and it slowly erodes the rock.
Oh yeah,
It's doing this slowly over time, and this is basically a way to accelerate that process by taking the basalt rock and doing this, and it helps to sequester carbon by doing this.
I don't understand how it helps sequester the carbon.
It's crazy science that I'm still wrapping my own head around, but it's neat stuff. I in my video I talked to one of the researchers that's working for a company called Undo that is doing this, and they're doing a lot of it in the UK and other areas around there. So it's like it's really interesting stuff, and really interesting. I'm still wrapping my head around it.
Yeah, no, I'm going to watch that episode. That sounds fascinating. Wow, that sounds. That's I've got a lot of catching up to do, obviously. But I mean, what we're clearly both excited by, which I think I find so uplifting when I see your stuff, is it feels like there's a doors opened. You know, when I was a kid, there was petrol cars, and I loved them. And I lived near a motor racing circuit. I lived near Silverstone, so we went to see motor racing, and it was noisy and smelly, and there was all this stuff. And there was nothing else, you know. And then electricity was made by burning coal that miners dug up, and they burnt the coal, and that made the electricity. And that everything was normal. It all worked up to a point, and there was no innovation in that world at all. It was just and what was tiny incremental improvements in combustion engines over the time I've been alive. They definitely got better and more reliable, but it's still it was like little adjustments. And what's really happened, I feel, in the last 10 and particularly the last 5 years is this absolute explosion of creativity and innovation and new technologies. And it's dizzying. And I think we'd both agree quite the majority of them probably won't work long term.
Yeah.
But some of them are going to, and they're going to be absolutely world changing.
Yeah. That's throwing a whole bunch of stuff at the wall at once, seeing what sticks. Some of them are going to work. And so it's just have a little patience, and we're going to find some really interesting things.
Because in terms of batteries, I mean, I don't want to keep you much longer, but in terms of battery technology, because that's the one that baffles me, because someone will go, oh, aluminium air. It's obviously the answer. We'll use aluminium air batteries. It's going to be brilliant. And they've got 10 times the energy density. And and then I'm waiting like 8 years later, nothing. Which one? Because there's so many variants of it. But the fact that there are, I mean, I don't know if your Model 3, I don't think my Model 3 has those batteries, but the latest Tesla batteries have no cobalt is extraordinary, because that's not yours. No, it's not mine either. No.
Yeah. That's a huge advancement. That's a big step forward to do that.
Yeah. We, our main editor has one, has a Chinese built Tesla with it. And I mean, I can't tell any different. It doesn't sound any different. It looks the same.
Drives the same, sounds the same.
Drives the same, yeah. But those things, I mean, is there a sort of battery technology that's caught your attention, like a new variant? I mean, there's obviously lots of chemical variants within lithium ion and lithium phosphate and lithium sodium ion. The rust batteries I was very intrigued by, but I haven't heard much about them. And then what's the one? Oh, well, the sand battery, but that's slightly different. That's heat storage.
Yeah.
But in terms of electricity storage, chemical electricity storage, is there one that you've gone,
I'm not saying I'm bullish on it, but it really intrigues me, is niobium batteries.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a company I talked to called Battery Streak that has a niobium battery that allows it to insane charge-discharge cycles, and it can fast charge in minutes, and it doesn't have the heating problems that lithium-ion batteries have. So it doesn't have to worry about the expansion and contraction of the battery. It's a really cool technology, and it looks kind of promising, but it's one of those, how long will it take for them to scale this up? They're going into pilot projects now, but it's like, does that mean 5 years from now? 8 years from now? It's I have no idea if it's going to actually work.
Yeah.
And then I also talked to somebody from Drexel University that had an accidental breakthrough with lithium sulfur batteries.
Yes, that's what I have heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's fascinating, but it's so early days on that research. Yeah. It's like, will that actually turn out? I have zero clue, but it looks super promising what they've discovered. Right. So, but again, that's like probably a decade away at the earliest.
Yes. Yeah. Because those sort of things, because I'm a good bit older than you, when I hear a decade away, you'll experience, you reach an age where you go, a decade away. Oh, they're probably not going to be around to see that, or it's questionable, whereas when I was younger, a decade away was still a long time, but it kind of felt I might get to see that. It's like electric flight. I mean, that's certainly a thing I was baffled. I was not expecting when I first drove an electric car and thought about those things and, started making fully charged. I never even talked or thought about aircraft, but we've seen some extraordinary developments in that. And that's I don't even know, the company we went to see, Zero Avia have they've developed batteries specifically for they've developed their own batteries. They're not buying sort of 18650 cells packaging them. They've got their own batteries, but I don't know what it was. It's their own technology. And I mean, that the money that's going into that, I mean, I'm assuming that's the same it is the same in the States, isn't it? But it's when I first saw a startup, so it was a startup company from Oxford made the motors, and a startup aeronautic company in Bristol was building a plane with those. And it's now Rolls-Royce and Airbus Industries and Siemens, it's really, and billions of pounds going into it. Just unbelievable amount of money.
Yeah, major companies are backing this kind of stuff now, which is showing that there's something there, that they think there's something there.
Because I don't think either of us will live to see an electric aircraft fly the Atlantic, for instance. But I think it's quite possible that you could fly from Boston to New York in an electric plane. In fact, it's not possible. It's very likely.
Well, where I live, there's a local airline called Cape Air that flies between Cape Cod and Boston and New York City, that area. And they already have ordered a bunch of electric planes from, was it Eviation's? Eviation?
Yeah, Eviation I've heard of.
Yeah. They've ordered a bunch of planes from them. So in the coming years, they're going to be right where I live. And as soon as one's available, I'm going to get on it.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I did, because I flew in a little training aircraft. I don't know if you saw that episode when I went up in that, which was very unfair in a way, because it was so windy. That plane is not designed to fly in very high winds. So it's nothing to do with the fact that it was electric was kind of irrelevant. It was just like, it was terrifying because it was going up and down in ways that the human body was not designed to do. But it works really well.
It was a terrifying experience.
It was pretty. I mean, I've flown quite a lot and had some extreme flight experiences. So I'm not as scared as I might have been if I'd never done that sort of thing before. But that said, the thing is, if it had been there is a petrol version of the same plane, same size, it would have been just as bad in that. The electric kind of made no difference because it's a tiny little thing. If you can lift up the side of an aeroplane quite easily with one hand, it's not very big or heavy, So it was going like that. It was a brilliant pilot. Deepak's just extraordinary, so calm. Because when we came into land, we were sort of sideways until he kind of made it go. I know it was extreme. And he did say after we'd landed and we got out and we'd had a cup of tea, he said that aircraft was flying at the very limit of its capabilities.
Oh my God, that's not what I would want to hear.
No, and you certainly don't want to hear it while you're in the air. You don't want to hear that over the headphones.
Yeah.
No, that is very. Well, I'm just going to keep watching what you do because I love it, and I will put links to Undecided in the show notes of this episode because it's a brilliant series. Well, you're doing annoyingly well. So
I appreciate it.
Well, I really hope you enjoyed that. It was such a joy to finally get round to talking with Matt, and we're going to definitely, he's going to become a regular guest. I'm going to try and sort of reboot the podcast a bit in the autumn. No radical changes, but I'm going to try and do more panel discussions, and we're sort of working out how to arrange that. And, what's the best thing of all is always when there are, say, 3 or 4 people in the same room together at the same time to do to discuss the topics of the day, because there's so much news that we kind of cannot possibly cover on our bi-weekly shows, tri-weekly shows now on Fully Charged Show. So anyway, that's all. Please do, if you enjoyed this podcast and you've listened to other episodes of the Fully Charged Plus podcast, please do tell your mates. That's a really good one. Spread the word of mouth. The numbers are going up amazingly. Our views on YouTube just gone ballistic recently. It's absolutely fantastic. I think we've all reached a point where we go, oh, this stuff is quite important. This isn't some sideline, elitist waffle that, oh, I've got solar panels, I'm better than everybody else. I'm virtue signaling. No, it's about saving money. Primarily, it's about having electricity in your house when it's cold. It's about keeping your house warm. It's about keeping your house cool when it's incredibly hot. Those things are kind of important, and there are other ways than doing it rather than importing toxic, filthy gas from a toxic little dictator and giving him money. Please let us stop doing that as soon as we can. Please, let's dedicate an enormous amount of our focus and energy in reducing our fossil fuel use in the next 5 years. Let's really go to town. And so that we really notice, oh my God, we've got more money in the economy because we're not sending it to Saudi Arabia and Russia and Norway. Norway don't need the money. They're not as horrible as the other ones, but they don't need the money. It's time we wean them off their fossil fuel dependence as well, and buying all the best electric cars. Damn Norwegians. I'm going off on one. I've got to stop. I'm going to shut up. That's all. Please subscribe. Have a look at the Patreon link. If you have been, thank you for listening.